This weekend, the news in Britain is going to dominate everything we're going to have to talk about here, because a lot of different things appear to have sort of come to a head here over the murder of Sarah Everard. Now, just to be clear, our position on this is that it appears to be an isolated incident where a police officer is accused of murdering this woman after snatching her from the street. There doesn't seem to be any political significance to the murder, and we don't have any personal attachment to the people involved. So for us, this is entirely abstract, and we don't think that this has a wider implication for society. Is that correct?
Seems to be, yeah. There's no trend of police officers murdering women for, whatever reason he ends up giving. It seems to just be a one-off so far.
So this is a tragic individual event that we don't think is mapped to any greater problem. What's the response been from the mainstream?
So, firstly, I just wanted to get a bit more of the, let's say, just the specifics of the case.
Yeah.
So, just what's normal, and then we'll go into the response, let's say. So, the first thing here is he appeared in court, and he was officially charged with murder and kidnapped. He hasn't been charged with indecent exposure, presumably because they don't have the evidence from that accusation, which was before he kidnapped and murdered this woman. So the woman he was arrested with in his house is almost certainly his wife or girlfriend. She's been released on bail. They don't seem to suspect her of, or they don't have enough evidence to charge her with aiding and abetting, but she's out on bail for the time being. The human remains they found have now been confirmed to be Sarah Everard, and they're probably going to charge him, and justice is probably being served in this case. I can't see anything here that makes me think that the police are trying to cover it up. I don't think the police are trying to do anything wrong here. It's, right, this guy was a murderer. We found the murderer. We're charging him.
It actually seems to all be fairly cut and dried and above board, right?
Yeah, I don't find anything here to be concerned about. It's like, okay, it's bad that it's a police officer, obviously, but that's not part of a pattern. It's not like the police are trying to cover up for him. This seems like justice is being served. So that's sort of where the story should end in a sane world. And I looked up, there has been at least one other murder last year, which was a police officer strangling a woman to death in, I think it was Hampshire. And it's sort of like that. It's something bad.
Where did this take place? Was it in Yorkshire or was it in London?
This murder. Yeah. So she was picked up in South London.
Right.
We don't know at what point she died, but he seemed to have killed her and dumped the body in Ashford in Kent, and then gone to his home in Deal.
Right, okay.
So that's South England, so it's quite a drive.
Yeah, okay.
So that seems to be just the case. But, of course, the reaction to this is what's become the story, let's say. It's what all the mainstream media are focusing on. It's what all the politicians are focusing on. And it has become the political atmosphere here, let's say. I don't know what else to put it.
It's just been like a mushroom cloud and taken over everything.
Yeah, so the first thing here is the next link, which is a fundraiser. So this group, who are calling themselves Reclaim the Streets, decided they wanted to do a vigil for Sarah on the basis that this was bad. Presumably, they don't know her. They're just upset that this has happened. Fine, whatever. I'm not for the lockdowns or anything, so if they want to do it, I'm in favour of that. But they had to go through the proper procedures, because that's the law here, whether you like it or not. So they had to apply to have it all set up, and they were worried that they get fined £10,000 per event they set up. So they started a fundraiser in which they wanted to raise £320,000 to pay all of these fines if it happened. They've raised $500,000 now. I don't know what they're going to do with that money, because they didn't get the permit to do it, and then they cancelled. So the next link here is them taking it to court. They lost at court. The High Court judge refused to say if it should be allowed or not allowed, and that was it. Legally, they said you have to talk to the police. They couldn't reach an agreement. And the next link here is them officially cancelling it. So this was the timeline. The organisation that set up this vigil said, we're cancelling it. We want people instead to set up candles. So to be commemorative that way, and that would be more safe. So a statement in here. A statement from Reclaim the Streets this morning confirms that agreement was not reached and the vigil has been cancelled, with people urged not to attend public gatherings and to consider lighting a candle on the doorstep instead. So that was what happened. They say in here that the political part, MP Jess Phillips, speaking during a parliamentary debate to mark International Women's Day, said, "Killed women are not vanishingly rare. Killed women are common." And then there's a quote in here which seems to show that this is being politically used. "A former colleague of Sarah Everard, she's a real person, not some hanger on which to display your views about women." So that's a colleague, not a member of the family, but that's what's been said. So
and just to speak to Jess Phillips' point, it's actually really rare that women just get kidnapped off the street and murdered.
it's also not increasing or decreasing or anything. It's a flat line.
Okay.
From what I can see of the data. So the vigil went ahead by the looks of it, obviously, because the people decided, I don't care, I want to do something, I'm going to go out. And the next link here is the Duchess of Cambridge turned up incognito. She wouldn't make it a big event or anything. She turned up, had a look, left. Just wanted to mention it because it's a thing that happened.
Yeah,
And
I saw a bunch of people criticizing her for saying, well, she turned up incognito, but she wasn't wearing a face mask, so people would recognize her.
Maybe. I mean, she's not required to outdoors, in case anyone's wondering. I know foreigners don't know what the rules are here,
sure.
but
No, I don't know what the bloody rules are.
I don't know what to say about this. I had a long conversation with my parents trying to discuss. I don't know what to make of this, so I'm just going to say nothing because I don't know. And then there was the vigil that itself. So if we get to the next link, this is the nighttime. So a lot more people turned up during the night, and you can see them waving their cameras there because it didn't go perfectly. It was not an instance of a bunch of people sitting around saying this is, let's remember her name. There's a bunch of people who don't know her, have some connection, they think emotionally, I guess, with some experience in their lives. And then it descended into an S show.
Well, just to be, if we can go back to that previous one, just quickly, it looks very much like a religious gathering to me. Looks like a Catholic vigil, right?
Yeah, so this image you're seeing here with all the lights up, this was, I believe, after the police turned up.
Right.
And they're shining it at the police. So let's just play the clip of the mess.
There is evidence to suggest that some of those who attended the vigil had been looking for trouble, and the police have been criticised before for not intervening in protests during the pandemic, notably by the Home Secretary.
Why are those men breaking curfew?
Why are there men attacking them? So apparently 34 assaults were done on the police there, and one of the wing mirrors was smashed up. I didn't see the footage, but apparently one of their men, smashed up the police's wing mirror for some reason. You can see them shouting, F the police, no justice, no peace, which is a statement from the United States, not from Britain.
Yep.
So, suspect. And this went on. So the police here are arresting some women, and this became the image of the night, which is that they were snatching women. If we can go to the next one, it's Ash Sarkar saying exactly that they've been snatching women. So these were women who were up on the pedestal. They were told to leave, did not want to, and then the police arrested them and removed them.
I can't believe women aren't being protected by the police of tolerance and diversity.
Yeah, and the position of the police in this is interesting because, I mean, you can say that this is bad optics and all that sort of thing, but they're sort of in a corner. So they issued a defense, which is that they absolutely didn't want this, but they were put in a position where enforcement action was necessary, is their wording here. Mm-hmm. Now, the thing is, this event was cancelled. There was no event, in their view, in officialdom, and they don't know how many people are going to turn up. It could be an unlimited amount of people. And their perspective is, we're not meant to have a position on the law, but we are told by the laws we must shut down events that could risk public health. So, I mean, I'm anti-lockdown. I don't think that this should be the case, but from a policing perspective, if they hadn't intervened, they'd be criticised for spreading COVID, and if they have intervened as they have, they've been criticised for arresting women, by the looks of it. So that's what's happened there. And, of course, the reaction to this was what you'd expect. So the Cathy Newman image, this is the image of the night, let's say. So this was what the narrative was going to be. You already know. It's that women held a vigil because of a police murderer, and the police brutality take place in which they beat up the women and arrest them. And this wasn't just like some people on Twitter. It was a lot of politicians started joining in. So lockdown supporter Kier Starmer joining in, that's saying that this was deeply disturbing and that they should have the privilege of protesting, which there's the other
But
complexity
you
here.
are in favour of lockdowns, Kier.
Yeah.
You don't want anyone protesting because it spreads COVID, Kier. What on earth are you saying, man?
There's the complexity, of course, of, well, some protests have been treated, like the lockdown ones, they got fined, they got beaten. And,
Piers Corbyn
yeah,
being the most significant one, for getting 10 grand fine.
and BLM being allowed to do their thing. There's a whole mess here. I watched a debate where human rights lawyers were raking the government over coals about this. Apparently, the government's position is they wanted protests to be protected, but they were completely unnecessarily fuzzy about when it should be and when it shouldn't be. So the police of saying, well, you didn't tell us how to do it, so of course there's cock-ups. That's their position.
It makes sense from the position of the sort of COVID lockdown tyranny to say no protests.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been much more clear. Either we do that or we do freedom.
Yeah.
So, but it's been a whole mess instead. But people like Keir Starmer, I have absolutely no sympathy for, unlike some other people here. So, because like you said, this is him saying that they should be able to protest. If we can get the next link, this is him a couple months ago saying that, no, we should introduce a national lockdown now. Stay at home, protect the NHS, vaccinate Britain. So the message was, no, this should not be allowed. You should be staying in your homes. But when it doesn't suit him, go for it. There's also the problem here, as something Hugo covered earlier, about that bill which legalised undercover officers doing some really grotesque stuff. So someone pointing out in the next one that he voted for a bill that lets undercover police officers off the hook for raping women.
Yes.
That is true. I don't know what else to say. We passed something terrible there. I don't know why the government did it. I don't know why Keir voted for it. But whatever. So then there's also lockdown supporter Ash Sarkar, very upset about all this, saying disgusting, the cops are not allies in the fight against male violence. I don't get this. Like, how is this a case of male violence? There is an individual police officer who murdered an individual woman, and you hold that individual police officer accountable.
Ash Sarkar's tweets are a goldmine.
But nah, it's men. Men did this.
They're right. No, but she's right. Most of the cops are indeed themselves men, so of course they're not going to be allies in the fight against male violence.
Yeah. Also,
didn't you see them oppressing those women at the vigil?
Yes, that's male violence, even
Yes.
though there were female cops also doing that. But
Yes.
whatever.
But
So
the police is doubtless a patriarchal institution.
I'm sure they're anti-socialist. So lockdown supporter Sadiq Khan also jumped in on this, saying that it was unacceptable what had taken place. The police have a responsibility to enforce COVID laws, but from the images I've seen, the response was at times neither appropriate nor proportionate. He never seemed to care previously when we're talking about those lockdown protests that would have been carried away. But also just a same thing here. Like him arguing that whilst the city remains in lockdown, we must all continue to follow the rules and protect lives of Londoners. But when it's your protest, then you don't care.
Well, he's put into a remarkably nice contradiction. It's like, well, I think the feminists should be able to go out and protest their stupid feminist nonsense, but also lockdowns are important and these things are in contradiction. And so I want the police to have found a sort of middle way between these two extremes that can't really be established.
Yeah. The best take of the night, which is now deleted, but we managed to save it, was from this lady, Kate Brown. Apparently she writes for the Telegraph.
Brown.
If we can get the image up. So we saved this in the Discord chat, otherwise she deleted it. So apparently during all this, there was someone who shouted out to the police, "You should have arrested the murderer." And the police responded with, "We did." And then she responded with, "Yeah, after he murdered someone." As if they should arrest him, I don't know, before he murders someone. I mean,
Well, that's the point. Like the very category of being a murderer requires you to have committed an act first. So you can't actually arrest a murderer before they murder someone, because at that point they're not a murderer. And so you wouldn't be arresting a murderer. And there's no such thing as a pre-crime yet, thank God.
But, always could be. And also lockdown supporter Caroline Lucas from the Green Party also said that the police action was them engaging in police brutality, and the scenes were absolutely shocking. But what they did here, from what I can see, is there's no batons being used. There's no horses being rammed into people or anything.
Yeah.
They just took the people who they said, "You have to leave or you'll be arrested," and arrested them. That's fine. Like, that's not police brutality. I can disagree that this should have been policed at all because I'm not pro-lockdowns, but that's not brutality. That's an arrest.
Well, if anything, compared to what happened at the Black Lives Matter protests and then the football lads protests, this is a remarkably soft touch from the police.
So the complaint seems to be you can't arrest them, they're women, which, no, because we live in a society that the law is that we should treat men and women exactly the same.
Let's ask Priti Patel how she feels about this.
Yeah, but I find that kind of conversation for another
You
time.
can't do this to me. I'm a woman.
Yeah.
That's exactly the attitude they've adopted here.
So, in response to this, people being upset that the police arrested people, there was a protest the next day, and I put together some of the clips of the protest of the next day, in which you can see some of the infiltration getting much worse. So let's play.
We have nothing to lose but our time. We have nothing to lose but our time. Our street, our street, our street, our street, our street, our street. The police.
A lot of middle-class white women there.
So for people who couldn't quite hear, they start with a Sadiq Khan quote, that we have nothing to lose but our chains
Yep.
narrative, which is an American thing, again. And then no justice, no peace, F the police, which is, again, an American thing.
Yeah.
And then ACAB, all cops are B words. Well, again, an American thing.
Yeah.
And
all of this is Twitter protest activism.
Yeah, this is not homegrown in the slightest. Which
And
is,
you'll notice that it's middle-class white women, university educated, doubtless on Twitter way too much.
and people who I'm sorry to say, I do not believe for a second they are sincere.
Nope.
I don't think they have any interest in the lady who was murdered. I don't think they have any connection. I don't think the most of them care. I think most of them are there for political purposes, such as this lady here, who is a Labour MP, who decided to go out and march with the protesters, even though she had previously made a big fuss about the fact that we all need to follow COVID rules as well. Shock horror. So then there's the fact that she tags in here a group called Sisters Uncut underneath. So if we just go to their account, so you can see their logo. And then we'll go to see...
Is this Women Against Circumcision or something?
I'm not quite sure. They seem to be just against domestic violence.
Feminist
and
group
violence
taking direct action for domestic and sexual violence services.
But they were handing out leaflets. And if we can go to the leaflets... it starts to get a bit more clear. So let's go to the next image here. So they're saying in here at the top, it's hard to read, but if you're caught by the police, you're not allowed outside for protesting. So they're admitting that they're breaking the law by doing this, even though I don't think it should be illegal. They should say to the police instead they're exercising within their bubble, which is obviously not true. So that's one thing. And then they go on to argue that, in the next image, that this sort of violence is rampant throughout society and we must do things about it and whatnot. So it's like, okay, so you've come here with a political agenda to try and radicalize people, in my view.
Well, obviously.
I don't think you have any interest in the lady.
I mean, I don't think it's in any way contentious to say that actually what's happening here is not a sort of grassroots movement of women who have been awakened across the country because of the rampant male violence. This isn't like a Rodney King circumstance for women, where they've been living under the oppressive heel of the patriarchy and suddenly, this was the final straw and now we're going to go out and protest. This is very clearly radical left-wing activism that has been inherited from Twitter, from our American cousins, that is being applied in a country where the problems simply are not the same.
Yeah, but I have to lament the point because I've just seen so many people who just don't get this, like so many normies. I can't stand it. So to lament it even more, let's go to the next image, which is just some communists turning up, holding their signs. So this guy with a little newspaper there saying about capitalist Britain.
Fight racism, fight imperialism.
British
is now
state.
the time, though?
British state, racist state, fight racism, fight imperialism. And then if you go to the next image on this tweet, they've got their own banners that they've brought, which are clearly made
Fight police brutality.
for this protest.
That's not what this was. This wasn't police brutality.
Like, the police officer was not enforcing the law,
it wasn't like she's out breaking COVID.
and then he killed her by accident or something. Like, no, this guy's a murderer.
Yes.
So I don't know what to say. It's just
Oh, God.
absurd. And then there's just the signs. You could see how the signs are the same signs they used a few months ago for BLM, and it's the same goddamn people. So this is just highlighting some of the signs here from the footage.
Yeah.
Defund the police. The Met is inherently racist and violent. Abolish the police. Defund the police. Police are the perpetrators. It's just the same stuff, like exactly the same stuff, which is embarrassing. And of course, the question is, well, why is this all of a sudden happening? And I'm not someone who thinks that there's some kind of conspiracy going on. I think it's just part and parcel of politics. Some people have found a case they think they can jump on in a similar but not exact way to George Floyd. People jumping on that. He was arrested. He's being charged with murder and manslaughter. They don't care. They don't care about the legal process. This guy was arrested. He's being charged with murder. Again, they don't care about the legal process. They don't care what's justice. They just care about their politics.
Well, that's because there's literally nothing they can say. You should have arrested the murderer. We did. Well, you should have done it before he murdered. Okay, now you're in the realms of absurdity.
Yeah, so the leftists protesting this who are anti-police, that's no surprise. The police are a barrier to them for their leftist revolution, so of course they're doing that. But there's some other politicking going on here. So the Tories are proposing a bill to make serious annoyance in a protest a crime, and what was it, like causing a disturbance and stuff like this, which seems like a bad bill. I'm not in favour of it. It seems bad.
Well, it's awful. The idea that making annoyance and offence illegal just...
But the obvious thing here is Priti Patel is trying to pass this to target Extinction Rebellion and Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
It is directly in response to those protests.
Yeah.
So that's
as much as I don't agree with them, I do support their right to protest.
yeah, but also I also support their right to protest because it hurts their cause. Like
Yeah, exactly.
them coming out and being a serious annoyance to the point that everyone hates them.
Yeah.
I mean, what you? I
More
don't want to ban
protests.
that. Go
More
for
protests,
it, mate.
yeah.
Like it exposes them for the fanatics that they are. So there's also feminist fanatics who are trying to get political capital out of this. So Jess Phillips was arguing on many TV stations following all this that she wants to make misogyny a hate crime, and then for privilege women in that sense, because she's not arguing it for hatred against men. Only
Or
for
hatred
against
on the basis of gender. She's saying hatred on the basis that they're women.
yeah, she's not interested in the reverse.
Can we just make a quick note? Jess Phillips' rhetoric all sounds rather turfy as well surrounding this. I've not once heard her say anything about trans women. She just keeps going on about women.
Well, she actively excluded them from her speech.
Seems
in
that
Parliament,
way, yeah.
So that's one thing. But there's also just the other fanatical feminists in the culture that says, let's go to the next link. There's this male guy on BBC, and he was arguing. So he was basically arguing
Man bun.
that we need to not teach women to be safe. We shouldn't argue that you should take karate lessons or hold your keys or make sure people know where you're going or anything like this. We should teach men not to murder and rape.
He just sounds like a man who wants women to be vulnerable.
But also just, what is he talking about? Name me the murder advocacy group. You know, name me the people who are arguing we need to murder more women.
Do you think the police officer who's been charged with Sarah Everard's murder didn't know that murder was wrong?
But it kills me because this is the same arguments you had in 2012 with the whole rape culture argument.
Yeah.
It's like we live in a rape culture, and it's like, well, name the rapists. Name the people who are like, yes, rape is cool. That's not happening. And then this is like, oh, we live in a murder culture. And it's like, that's just not true. Why did we arrest the guy? Why does everyone condemn the guy? They don't care. They're just trying to get more political capital, I think.
Yeah.
And then they're just factually wrong as well. So let's go to the BBC link. If you can scroll down to the first graph here, it's a graph of killings of men and women. So this is what I was talking about earlier. You can see the male graph is sort of spiking a little bit since 2015, most likely in response to what's happening in London. And the number of women being killed is basically stable. It's a flat line for the last 10
But
years.
it's also about, 50% lower?
Yeah, it's much lower, which is to be expected. I mean, most murders are men killing men,
Less.
and then men killing women, either in the household or something like this. The data shows that men are the victims of people who want to murder them, who are strangers. Women, much less so. So if a woman walks home at night and a man walks home at night and a stranger wants to murder them, the man is actually more likely to die as well.
I mean, look at the numbers here. 1,425 women were killed by men in the last 10 years, up to 2018.
Yep.
So, okay. I mean, that's bad, but 142 a year, I don't think that's epidemic.
No, it's not a huge increase or anything like that. There is no argument here. There is nothing on the basis of fact. But of course, these people don't care about facts. They only care about being virtuous. They want to be the ones who are remembered on the right side of history and all that. And they aren't. They are evil. They are morally inferior to the people caring about facts here. And I want to make the point, and I'm going to use some articles from Spike.com, which is a great outlet for this. So this is one person arguing that you should stop exploiting the death of Sarah Everard. And there's some great quotes out of this. We are being told that what is happening to Sarah could happen to any woman anywhere. Only it won't. The very fact that Sarah's story has gripped our collective consciousness to such an extent that it indicates how rare it is for a woman to be abducted and murdered by a stranger.
Yeah.
It's true. If this was normal, no one would care. So,
Well, yeah, it certainly wouldn't be front page news and dominate the political consciousness of Great Britain.
yeah, and then there's the people who know. So we mentioned a colleague who said that you shouldn't be using this to put your opinions on women. There's also someone who was a friend. So this is someone who wrote an article saying, this is not what Sarah would have wanted. I think my friend would have been unsettled at how her death is being politicized. So she was apparently planning to go to the vigil and then decided not to, and is very angry at the way it turned out. She says in here, my friend's tragic death has been hijacked. It is not a tribute to her anymore. It is about something else, and I don't like what it's become. Sarah was a victim of one of the most horrific crimes imaginable. She was extremely unlucky, and that's all there is to it. And that's what the data shows. And these leftists jumping on board and being like, this woman's death, we can use it for leverage for our political purposes. I just find it disgusting, and it's they should be embarrassed.
Oh, it is disgusting. It's an embarrassment as well. But again, reality really doesn't matter in this circumstance because, like, they're looking for a martyr, so they're not really looking for factual analysis. What they're looking for is pathos. They're trying to stir people up, get some upswell of emotion and bring in some kind of change. But the thing is, the change that they've been asking for isn't really very well defined, and so it's ended up in, should there be a curfew for men? What?
Yeah, because they have no policies they can recommend.
Well, yeah, exactly. Oh, well, we should make murdering women illegal or something. Sounds a good idea.
Don't worry, buddy. I've already done it.
Yeah.
Like, what do you...
Like
There's
why?
the argument with the murder culture. Like, not only is it illegal, we enforce that law. It's not like something we're like, we'll put it on the books, but we won't do it. Like, no. Murdering people is enforced. We get very, very upset about people murdering people in this country.
Yeah.
Sorry to tell you.
I don't even know why we have to have this as a particular conversation, but there we go. But again, it's all about pushing an ideological agenda that doesn't have any particular resemblance to reality. That's the problem. If you enjoyed this segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can watch the full broadcast live every weekday at 1 p.m. UK time on lotuseaters.com.